Internal and external storage solutions. The purpose of this nugget is to get us well grounded in the nature of 1. Optical drives and media. We'll understand some of the standards that have emerged concerning CD and especially DVD technology. We'll take another look at solid-state media. This is a subject we've touched on in previous nuggets. However, it's time to broaden and deepen our knowledge of that. And then we're going to take what we've learned about storage technologies and understand the crucial nature, I should say, of backup services. There's nothing like losing a unique document forever to wake you up to the fact that it is absolutely all important to have a backup data strategy in place. Without any further ado, let's start working. First, what the heck are optical drives and why are they useful? Optical drives, that's basically a fancy way to refer to your CD or your DVD drives in your computer device. Specifically, optical refers to the physical properties of how disks are read and written. In other words, these disks, these platters, are read and written with a real live laser. If you pull out or take a look at a 5 1/4 inch optical drive, hold it in your hands, you'll actually see warning labels on there discussing that this is a class such and so laser product. The form factor for optical drives in desktop computers is pretty standard, 5 1/4 inch wide. And the reason for this standardization, as I'm sure you already know, is to ensure that if we go online and order a replacement DVD burner to replace the one that's broken in our desktop computer, we won't have any worries about the new drive fitting into the case slot. Alternatively, as far as connectivity options, optical drives typically will use either the PATA, the parallel ATA connectors, or the SATA connectors in newer systems. Note also that optical drives can be either internal to the case, as I just mentioned, or external. As a matter of fact, back in the mid to late 90s, my very first CD burner that I've ever bought, boy was I proud of that thing, was an external device that I believe used USB connectivity to link up to my system. Some things that we should know as IT sales representatives are, for instance, data capacities of the different optical media. First of all, CD, as I'm sure you know, stands for compact disc. CD-ROMs are what you get if you purchase an audio CD from a music store or a software CD from a computer software store. We already know from our previous discussion of memory that read-only memory is data that's written once to the media and cannot be overwritten. It's there permanently. It was really nice in the late 90s when we began to be able to record our own CDs. These are the CDRs, or compact disc recordables. Much less popular and kind of cumbersome to use are the rewritable. This is what RW stands for, especially now in 2010, 2011, with recordable CDs being so inexpensive. Why in the world would you take the time to erase and re-record data on that CD? I sure wouldn't. At one time, the CDR's capacity, which still stands at between 650 and 700 megabytes, depending upon the specific subtype of CDR, seemed like a lot of space, but nowadays it's really not that big of a deal. Nowadays we have the digital video disc, also called digital versatile disc. Again, same motif with the ROM. This would be your movie that you buy in the video store or you rent in the video store. DVD-R, DVD-RW, of course, deals with recordable or burnable DVD media. Depending upon whether it's a single layer or dual layer disc, you can get 4.7 gigabytes or even 9.4 gigs of storage capacity on the disc. The notion of single or dual layer, this can be confusing for some. A dual layer DVD-R does not mean that you record on both surfaces of the disc, interestingly enough. You actually record on 2 layers on the one side of the disc. Normally one side is kind of dull. That's where your laser etches the grooves in there that record your data. And the other side is shiny, and that's where you can use a Sharpie to mark up the label or affix an actual honest-to-goodness label on the media. The very latest technology in optical drives is the Blu-ray, also called BD-ROM for the ones that cannot be written to. Nowadays you can even buy, although they're very expensive, Blu-ray disc burners. The capacities just keep jumping up, don't they? 650 megs to 4.7 gigs, and now single-layer Blu-ray will record record 25 gigabytes. Dual layer Blu-ray, 50 gigabytes. Now before I show you some pictures and we go out onto the web again for illustration, there's the issue, and it's a good issue. What is the persistence of optical media? Ideally, it would be great if we could take our important documents, our family photographs and so on, archive them on a disk and then preserve that disk forever and ever, amen. Unfortunately, optical media does degrade, so they say, the folks who have looked into this in the world, that optical media has a baseline lifetime of about 10 years, and at this point I have a lot of discs that I've burned that are at least 10 years old, and quite frankly I do have mixed results in being able to spin up some of them, but not others. Therefore, how do you keep data forever and ever, amen? Really, it's a question of once you get to a certain number of years, you might just want to transfer that information to a new disk to keep it moving. Going out onto the web and doing a Google image search for optical drive shows us some of the basic form factors here. Remember that optical drives and laptops are going to have the same basic technology, that is, they'll use parallel or serial ATA in general, and they function identically to the desktop PC variety, but you'll notice that the form factor is very slim to accommodate the slim nature of a typical laptop case. Desktop computers use the 5 1/4 inch form factor as you see here, and almost always, this used to be more important in the quote olden days of this technology, you'll have a speed rating. Maybe it's 52x read, 24x write. Now what does that mean? Those are multipliers that tell you as a factor how much faster this optical drive performs with read operations and write operations from the original optical drives that were published in the late 90s. So for a purchasing decision, it stands to reason that you'd want a drive that has a faster revolution rate, a higher X value, shall we say, for both reading and writing, because that means, very simply, that the optical drive will work faster than one with a lower X factor. Again, here we have some pluggable optical drives that you can literally slide into place on laptop computers. It used to be a few years ago that in order to save space in a laptop chassis, you'd have an optical drive like you see here that you can just plug out, not in a hot way. You'd have to power off the PC first. But you could swap this out with, say, a 3.5 inch floppy disk drive. I'm glad those days are over. Wikipedia is a good source for looking at numbers with reference to this technology. Their article on DVD, or digital versatile disk, has a section on capacity. Let's take a quick look at that. Standard DVDs have several formats and designations. 4.7 or DVD5 is the traditional historic DVD standard that we use. Oftentimes in console games, you have the DVD9. This is that double layer, single-sided double layer. That's what SSDL means. You notice that there are DVD formats that enable you to record on both sides. However, on your CompTIA Strata exam, we're only concerned with the single-side varieties. Blu-ray disc, there's another interesting article on Wikipedia there that talks about probably more than you want to know about that technology. Another interesting nod, the high-definition optical disc format war. We talked about this issue in either the previous nugget or the one before, where when a new technology, in this case high-capacity optical discs, comes out, there tend to be at least two major players that wind up in a format war. In this case, it was Sony's Blu-ray versus the HD DVD consortium. And of course, as we all know, Blu-ray won that war, and you could pick up HD DVD discs and HD DVD drives for dirt cheap. They're probably going to become collector's items before too long. As nice as optical discs are, with CDRs and DVDRs and now Blu-ray recordable discs, they do have nice capacity. However, they're not particularly good in terms of convenience. That is to say, it generally takes a heck of a lot longer to burn data to a CD or a DVD than it does to record the same amount of data transfer it to, say, a USB flash drive. So we're just going to compare and contrast now between the optical media and now revisiting solid-state media. When we talk about solid-state storage material, we're referring to a specific kind of memory called flash memory. Flash is great memory for persistent data storage here because it's fast, there's no moving parts, it's reliable. They say that it's not a question of time that your solid-state media will reliably hold data for. Instead, it's the number of reads or writes that device is good for. So you may research a USB flash drive or a USB external drive and learn that it's good for 250,000 reads or writes. So that gives you a better indicator of its long-term viability. As I've mentioned several times before, the no moving parts aspect of flash memory means that we have eminent shock resistance. Whereas, as you all know, if you've ever accidentally set a drink down on a CD or a DVD, or thrown one as a frisbee or had the dog get a hold of it, they're quite fragile indeed. On the other hand, I've seen flash memory cards, thumb drives, and SD cards go through the laundry and then still reliably read and write data. Form factors for solid-state media include USB interfaces. The USB flash drive, also called a thumb drive. You see the Cruiser Micro variety down in the lower right. This is my personal favorite USB thumb drive. Number one, it's just been eminently reliable for me. Number two, the size is convenient. And number three, I really like the fact that you can expand and contract the actual USB plug. If you tend to carry these in your pockets, which if you're like me, you do, you wouldn't want some lint, cookie crumbs, or some other unmentionable getting stuck inside that USB plug. Therefore, it's nice to be able to retract it. Another form factor for solid-state storage media are the flash memory cards, as they're called. This is over here on the right. The SanDisk model is the SD format. Again, talk about format wars. The original solid-state multimedia card, it was called Compact Flash. It's still around. However, the cards are much bigger, much larger in diameter, and thicker than the SD cards. SD has a number of subtypes. Some of them are as small as your fingernail, and they can still store gigabytes upon gigabytes of data. Now, where and how do we use these SD cards, these multimedia flash cards? Well, the list goes on. You can put them in your PDA or smartphone for extra storage. You can put them in your camcorder or digital camera. As I said earlier in the previous nugget when I showed you the Apple iMac, many computers nowadays have one or more flash memory slots to accommodate SD, perhaps compact flash, and other form factors of these cards. Therefore, it's really the new currency instead of floppy disk. These flash memory devices have certainly taken the place of the floppy in terms of providing very fast and convenient I/O. The third and final form factor for solid-state media is the solid-state disk, or SSD. Now again, disk might call to mind the mechanical hard drive with the spinning platters. Don't think that way. SSDs are solid-state hard drives for the desktop or the laptop. You see one right here. This is a laptop-sized serial ATA 64 gig solid-state disk. The price on these is pretty high. I would say double what you'd expect to pay for a similarly sized mechanical hard drive. But you get all the neat advantages: lower energy consumption, speed, reliability with the SSD. It's definitely the way of the future for persistent storage, but it still may be a few years before the price becomes reasonable. This is an interesting pastiche or hodgepodge image that shows a whole bunch of different flash memory cards. The ones that are honkin' big are clearly compact flash cards. We can also see with the notched corner, that's the hallmark of the secure digital or SD card. There's also the XD format. Sony has a proprietary memory stick format. Those tend to look like smaller sticks of chewing gum. Let's come back and see if we can get better images here. This is a larger picture that shows a side-by-side comparison between an SD card, a compact flash card, and an XD picture card. Some of these off formats, my dad has an Olympus digital camera, and there's a proprietary picture card format that's not usable elsewhere. Real pain in the hinder as far as I'm concerned. It's interesting that we have a matchstick here for reference to give you an idea as to size. Now this is a very old image because as you see, this SanDisk card is only 64 megs. Now you can almost get 64 gigs in the same form factor. It's pretty amazing. Now what if your computer is old enough such that it does not have memory card slots in the chassis, like in this case here? Speaking of which, this is a desktop PC that does on the front of it have some media slots here. You notice that this particular one supports compact flash, SD, smart media, and the Sony memory stick. Again, the reason why there are the multiple slots is because of these format wars, which SD has really won. Here's a picture of a typical flash memory card reader. These are awfully convenient. Almost always the external ones, as you see here, are USB 2.0 powered. And again, you have a plethora of slots to accommodate the different technologies. Here we see again, memory stick, SD, and compact flash. These all show up as hard drives, or as removable drives, I should say, in Windows Explorer or on a Mac OS X system. They mount to the desktop just like an actual honest-to-goodness optical disc or a fixed hard drive would. Having examined the solid-state media storage types and the optical storage type, let's look at the use of mobile media. In other words, what kind of hardware devices and software are ordinarily used with this mostly, if not exclusively, solid-state or SS realm? Well, number one, we can find flash memory in current generation MP3 or portable audio devices. It used to be, say, with the original Apple iPods, you actually had very tiny mechanical hard drives in those iPods. I used to sometimes know when an iPod was about to fail. Almost always the original iPods failed in that mechanical hard drive. No big surprise there. And you could hear the platters clicking and spinning audibly by putting your ear up to the device. Fortunately, all current generation iPods, and like I said, just about all portable media players rely upon solid-state memory and enable you to do things like display high-definition video, MP3, WMA audio, etc. As far as software, PC software, we have media player software, like in Microsoft Windows, their built-in media player is Windows Media Player. Apple offers free for download their iTunes management software. In the third-party realm, there's the freeware VLC player, one of my favorites. I love that one. And on the shareware front, we have Winamp. Any good software media player is going to enable you to play various kinds of audio and video, as well as perform an action called ripping. Now, what ripping means in a nutshell is where you take your commercially purchased audio CD, put it into your computer, and then use a piece of software to extract a copy of all of those audio tracks so that you can then transfer them, say, to your portable MP3 player, or just play them conveniently from your hard drive. Now, the idea with ripping, of course, is that we need to respect copyright, and there are rules regarding fair use of audio CDs that you purchase from the store. That is, you can make one backup copy and so forth. We don't need to get into the legality there. We just have to understand that burning material to a disk, ripping data from a disk, and even providing what are called visualizations. Media players like Windows Media Player and iTunes can give you like video kaleidoscopic effects that pulse in unison with the music you're listening to. Kind of fun for some folks. For digital cameras, this is going to take a variety of different flash memory card formats. Older digital cameras I've owned used compact flash almost universally. Now, though, it's an SD card. Digital cameras are used, obviously, to take still digital pictures, but many current generation digital cameras, especially ones where you've got a larger capacity flash card, you can actually take several minutes worth of movies. How do we connect a digital camera to our PC? Well, the same way we would do that with a portable audio player. Generally speaking, the Universal Serial Bus or USB interface. We're going to be talking in great detail about USB a little later in the course, so please don't feel left out in the rain if you're thinking, Tim, you're mentioning USB a lot here, but you're not explaining it. Finally, we have the dedicated video device, the camcorder. I happen to have what's called the Flip Ultra HD camcorder. This is a fairly inexpensive handheld device that connects to the computer via USB. You can connect the camcorder via HDMI directly to your TV. Older flip cameras and older camcorders use the RCA style connection, although certainly nowadays with high definition, the HDMI, the high definition multimedia interface, is the standard way to go. Camcorders, yet again, have gone from the old tape format. I remember owning a long time ago a VHS format camcorder, and that thing was as big as a set of shoulder pads that you'd wear on the football field. It was ridiculous. And gradually the form factor of those tapes got smaller and smaller, the little mini VHS. Finally, we're now in the land, fortunately, of not using analog tape, but instead using digital solid-state media. This course is really quite a history lesson in technology, isn't it? Our final subject in this nugget is that of backup services. Any enterprise worth its salt has to have a backup strategy in place. I mean, if a computer's hard drive were to go belly up and crash, heaven forbid, you could feasibly reinstall the operating system in your applications all day long. However, any documents, images, movies, documents that were created by you, the user, unless you take action to back up one or more copies of that data, if the hard drive goes kerflooey, your data does as well. Simple as that. Now, in an enterprise environment, we're generally talking about a lot of data. It's definitely in the gigabytes and could, in some environments, go up into the terabytes. That's the thousands of gigabytes. Believe it or not, tape media, as you see this Imation tape you see on the right, looks like an old cassette tape from the 70s and early 80s, doesn't it? Tape media is still used as a primary backup service in IT shops today. Tape media is read-write data storage in a sequential fashion. That is, if we run 3 backup jobs on 3 sequential days, you can rest assured that earlier in the tape is the first day, then the second day, third day, etc. On magnetic tape, the same kind of tape that you remember from the VHS video cassettes, or as I said, the audio cassette. Why is tape media still around? Well, it's pretty ubiquitous. I mean, the tapes aren't exactly inexpensive, but they're not prohibitively expensive, so you can keep plenty of them around. There's a lot of vendors out there who make these tape carousels. I'll show you some pictures in just a minute, where you've got a whole bank of tapes, and if each tape stores several gigabytes, then you could quite easily perform backups of all of your corporate data to these tapes and have it be fairly time effective. I mean, they're not the fastest recording things in the world, not the fastest reading, but the bottom line is that they work. Exam objective that we need to be aware of for Strata is another more contemporary backup service that's starting to gather steam now in 2010 is what's called online storage. A huge buzzword now in IT, probably one of the top 3, is the notion of cloud computing. And online storage is a cloud-based solution. Now, what the heck does the cloud refer to? The cloud refers to not exactly the internet, but it refers to where you're storing data external to your organization. You're using some contracted service provider, and you're storing your data on their hard drives. You don't know what the hard drives look like, where they are. They may be distributed across several computer systems in several locations around the world. The notion of the cloud is you as the customer don't care about those details. In fact, that's the chief benefit of online storage. It provides what we call a turnkey solution to problems like how do we back up data each day. All right? So you would form a partnership with a cloud-based backup provider and then set up your backup schedule such that at 2 a.m. every morning when everybody's home, your servers and all of their important data gets backed up through your internet connection over a secure link, I would hope, to your provider. And if you need to restore any files, you can just pull those again from the cloud. It's a really neat way to do business, very hot now. Folks make their entire livings in IT being backup storage engineers, and even more so working in cloud-based computing. Now, cloud-based backups are actually an example of this next bullet point, off-site storage. Let's say you run a small business where you're doing tape backups every night and you have a whole shelf that shows those backups so you could restore at any point in time any file in the past month. That's all well and good, but what if your building burns down in a catastrophic fire? Or what if data theft occurs and someone actually steals that library of tapes? Well, you're in a world of hurt then. So besides having a solid backup strategy in place, it's also incumbent on most IT managers to generate some kind of off-site storage solution to protect against these so-called acts of God. Again, there are vendors, like Iron Mountain being one of the biggest, that make their living by contracting with IT departments such that every day or every week an Iron Mountain person will come out to your shop with a fireproof case, retrieve that week's worth of tapes, or however often you're having them come. And then it's up to Iron Mountain to securely preserve those tapes in an underground, fireproof, bomb-proof location. And the idea there is even if your physical plant is leveled, at least Iron Mountain or whoever it is that you've contracted with has your data preserved. The final point of backup services is tape archival. Now, because these tapes use old-fashioned magnetic tape, if you have history like I do using things like 8-track cartridges and audio cassette tapes and VHS tapes, you know that that tape is just as likely as not to get all tangled up and twisted and bent and break. And same things happen with magnetic tape in backup situations. So to protect against undue wear and tear and to maximize the lifetime of your tapes, there are different strategies that many shops turn to. One that I've found particularly helpful is the disk-to-tape solution. And what this does is that you take your backup set, in other words, all of the data that you're backing up from your servers or any other machines or appliances in your network. And instead of backing up the data directly to tape, you back up first to another hard drive. Then in the background, the backed up data from that hard drive gets written out to the tape. This is a really elegant solution. Remember that disk-to-disk transfers are going to occur much faster than disk-to-magnetic tape. So this first step should complete fairly quickly. Then our production machines are back doing what they do best, their ordinary roles. And in the background, you have a dedicated disk that's then in the background, as I just said, recording to tape. Now, tape archival means that we cycle tapes. We take a week's worth of backups, put them up on the shelf or send them to Iron Mountain, bring out a new set of tapes. You're doing what's called tape rotation, always with an eye of not having the same tape being hammered with reads or writes day in and day out. We want to be really careful about that. And again, there are entire books written on the subject, so we're barely scratching the surface. Nonetheless, you're definitely in a position to answer correctly any related questions you see on your Strata IT for Sales exam. I happen to know a lot of folks who are IT sales representatives for value-added resellers or VARs, or who work for companies who do disaster recovery solutions. It's a really big market, like I said. So if you already work in that industry, then that's all to the good. You know the importance of understanding this stuff. However, if you're not working in disaster recovery sales specifically, you might want to do some research on the net just to get an idea, again, of the format wars that go on, in this case with regard to magnetic tape data storage. There's so many different tape formats. Look at this, going from 1951 all the way into the 21st century and beyond. LTO Ultrium is a format that I've worked with a lot. And as it says here, the LTO was developed as an answer, as an open standards alternative to proprietary magnetic tape formats that were available at the time. Ultrium holds 100 gigs of data in a single cartridge. The most recent version, released in 2010, can hold 1.5 terabytes in the same cartridge. Now, those cartridges are a little bit smaller than an 8-track cartridge, if you happen to remember those. Isn't that amazing? Here's a Google image search that shows, this is pretty funny, that's some serious old school tape. You know that magnetic tape storage has been around so long when you can see images like that. Then finally, I wanted to take you out to ironmountain.com. This is a good reference site to look at if you're interested in off-site data backup storage. They can tell you about their vaulting. They actually offer some cloud-based solutions, as you see here, online backup. They also do secure shredding, as you see right here. It's a really great company. There's a location right here in Nashville where I live, as a matter of fact. Internal and external storage solutions review. In this nugget, we covered the mechanics of optical drives and optical media. You now should understand some stuff about DVD, CDR, and Blu-ray, being able to differentiate those, the relevant pros and cons of those standards. Solid state media, we compared and contrasted optical media with solid state, looked at, in particular, flash memory card formats, how those work. And then finally, we underlined the importance of having a good backup strategy in place for your organization, and I gave you some really nice industry, real-world, practical advice with regard to how to get a program like that off the ground. I hope that this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.